As our country was founded, we were to have a government of, for, and by the people. That is, the people were to control the government. But it has absolutely turned upside down and turned all around. It is today a government against the people, and particularly is this the case under the Democrat rule with men such as Joe Biden, Barack Obama earlier, supported by the George Soroses of the world. I have two different stories that we want to look at that show this is exactly the case, and both of these stories involve the FBI. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is the strong arm or the enforcement arm of the government that is to be investigating crime in America, but actually it has become the strong arm of the Biden administration to implement his policies against the will of the people and against the law. So we'll look at both of these stories in order. The first of them involves the statistics regarding crime. The FBI tells us that crime is down in America. But everybody knows on the streets and everybody in America knows that's an absolute fabricated lie. What's happened? They have actually changed the statistic making methods that they have, and they've had a pea and shell game, and they've moved things around so that they reclassify different things. The other story involves what's taking place right now in Houston. In Houston, as was reported by Christian News several months ago, they were practicing transgender surgeries. And different doctors blew the whistle on them. And now there's a nurse that has also blown the whistle regarding transgender surgeries. But these are against the law in Texas. Nevertheless, the FBI, the strong arm of the Biden administration, has visited individuals at the Texas Children's Hospital, those whistleblowers, and have actually threatened them. This is frightening because it shows us that you have a government that is completely out of control and threatening individuals that are actually trying to tell the truth. This is a totalitarian style, mafia style government that is led by Joe Biden. So that's what's taking place right now. So let's think about this. And by the way, this is the bigger picture is what? The bigger picture is that our own government continues to lie to us. It has become our enemy. And this is not going to be settled by simply having Donald Trump go into the White House as opposed to Joe Biden. When Donald Trump was in the White House, we had the head of the armed services disregard the commander-in-chief's orders and say he's not going to obey them. We have a rogue, totalitarian, communistic style government that is not run by the people. It is absolutely against the people. So let's look, first of all, at crime statistics and the FBI's involvement in shifting the ideas about how to classify crime. It's the old chasm between, this is written by Selwyn Duke, he says, it's the old chasm between the pseudo-elite and the street. More than 3/4 of Americans believe that crime has gotten worse in recent times. That's according to a November 2023 Gallup poll. In contrast, mainstream media and other pseudo-elites tell us that crime is down, citing FBI statistics to make their case. But here's what they don't tell you. And that is, because probably out of ignorance, maybe out of willful ignorance, and that is the FBI statistics are highly suspect, to say the least. For example, let's just take an illustration from the CDC. What happened with the vaccine mandates? Well, the CDC redefined the definitions of vaccines. We talked about that on the radio over and over again back in 2020, 2021. They redefined what is a vaccine and a vaccination in 2021. The same thing is the case regarding crime. Certain police departments are redefining the classification of certain violent crimes, especially after 2020, in the wake of the George Floyd riots. So nonetheless, mainstream media loves to tout the official statistics, and those statistics tell us, for example, quote, the 2024 FBI quarterly crime report makes clear, this is Newsweek now, makes clear that crime is down massively across the country. Murder is down over 26%. Rape is down over 25%. Robbery is down over 18%. Assault by over 12%. And property crime down just over 15%. Now, this is Newsweek's article. That's the end of the quote. Now, the piece's author, Ross Rosenfeld, claims Biden's health is perfectly fine. He's the same guy who says that. This is all absolute lying to the American people by means of reclassifying crimes. We might even back up and note this is exactly what's taking place in the educational field as well. As a matter of fact, schools are more and more successful in places like Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Boston, so forth, only if you take the grades that they're given by the teachers, that they're all passing with A's and B's and C's, but at the same time, the learning of the children continues to plummet to lower and lower levels. How is that the case? Because they simply redefine, regrade, in this case, what is taking place in the classroom. That's exactly what's happening regarding crime statistics. The truth, of course, is far different than what is presented by Newsweek. Consider the findings, for example, of the Coalition for Law, Order, and Safety, CLOS, Coalition for Law, Order, and Safety, an independent group of law enforcement officials and analysts. They say in April 2024 report, this is just a few months ago, they identify 4 potential causes for what they judge to be an increase in crime in most major cities across the United States. That is, number 1, depolicing, number 2, decarceration, deprosecution, and politicization of the criminal justice system. Note the 4 different things again: depolicing, decarceration, deprosecution, and the politicization of the American criminal justice system. Even insofar as crime might, in certain respects, be down from 2020 levels, said the analysts, this is deceptive because that year saw a historic spike in criminality. Yet we should really believe that crime has dropped in all government statistics? Is that reliable? Fox News jumps in on this one and they tell us the following, quote, through aggregated data sets directly more than 70 of the nation's largest police departments and victim surveys, researchers claim violent crime has been substantially elevated in major cities compared to pre-2020 levels. The group's research also showed that due to significant underreporting of certain crimes, the FBI official data doesn't completely capture the full snapshot of crime in the United States. Continuing the quote, there's a series of caveats attached to the FBI data that the FBI doesn't make as clear as they should. Sean Kennedy, one of the lead CLOS researchers, told Fox News Digital in an interview. According to Sean Kennedy, particularly in the aftermath of the 2020 George Floyd riots, several police departments, now here's the key, get this, redefined the classifications for certain violent crimes and transitioned away from a decades-old recording system. So there you have it. Sean Kennedy shows the truth, and that is that they are reclassifying violent crimes. How do you like that? How would you like it to be the case if your children are assaulted or sexually assaulted, and they would reclassify that as a misdemeanor? All they're doing is reclassifying crimes so that they can say that crimes are down, when in point of fact, under Biden's administration, under the Democrats, we have the spike in crimes, and everybody knows it. Continuing the quotation, this is once again from Fox News Digital, quoting Sean Kennedy from the CLOS. If you classify something as an aggregated assault, he's explaining to us, it's a violent crime or a felony. But if you classify it as a simple assault, that is not an aggravated assault, but a simple assault, it's then a misdemeanor and a non-violent crime. There's a world of difference when it comes to how the media is going to portray whether or not your department is fighting violent crime. So what is going on? They're redefining violent crime, reclassifying it as misdemeanors, as simple assaults instead of aggravated assaults, in order that the statistics might show that crime has dropped. That is absolutely deceptive. It is wicked, and that is what's going on with the Biden administration, inclusive of the FBI. However, the police are not the only ones appearing to underreport. Businesses and individuals who are victims of violent crimes have also shown a pattern of reluctance when it comes to calling the police. The Loss Prevention Research Council survey, that's Loss Prevention Research Council, they had a survey of retailers, sheds light on the reasons behind the lack of reporting. The study shows that typically business owners tend to harbor the belief that the police will not respond promptly or investigate crimes, and prosecutors will not pursue charges against the perpetrators. End of quote. In other words, since there is little response from police departments, particularly in the major cities, responding to these violent crimes, responding to theft, responding to robbery, responding to assaults, whether it be simple assaults or aggravated assaults, since the lack of police response is going on, then we have a less reporting, that is, a reluctance to report it by people who are there, who are being actually assaulted and victims of crime. The result? The Washington Examiner reported this in April, quote, "Bad data from the FBI mislead about crime. A rising share of victims are failing to report their victimizations at all. In 2022, only 42% of violent crime victims, only 33% of property crime victims bothered to report the crime to police." That is a little bit more than 1/3 only of violent crime victims are reporting. That's in 2022. And only 1/3 of property crime victims bother to report the crime to police. Why? Because the police are not enforcing the law, because the Democrats have tied their hands, and the FBI helps them do that. So Selwyn Duke, who writes the article, tells us, he said, "I can vouch for this personally. I lived in the Bronx," he tells us, "till the age of 28, and off the top of my head, I can think of 3 somewhat valuable items that were stolen from my family, but which were never reported to the police. Why? Because we knew it would be futile. What's more, there are apparent discrepancies between the FBI reporting and some cities' own statistics." The Washington Examiner goes on to inform us this: "The figures the agencies do report to the FBI do not match the agency's publicly reported figures. For Baltimore, the FBI reported 225 murders in 2023, but the city reported 262. So the FBI, 225, but the city itself reported 262, which means the FBI left out 37 murders. In Milwaukee, the police department reported a 7% increase in robberies, but the FBI showed a 13% drop. You see why we question the FBI? You see why we question the Biden administration that continues to lie to the people through the arm of the FBI? Continuing the quote this is from Selwyn Duke. He tells us Nashville's own data tallied more than 6,900 aggravated assaults in 2023, but the FBI counted only 5,941. That's leaving almost 1,000 offenses missing. And this trend is consistent across the board. Always the FBI is reporting less crime than the city's own statistics are doing. And so while in 2022, the FBI city-level figures track the police's own data, the 2023 numbers consistently undercount offense totals. Any year-to-year comparison overstates the decline. Other measures of crime levels undermine or at least muddle the veracity of the FBI's data. What's going on at the FBI? You know what's going on at the FBI. They're actually muddying the waters, redefining, reclassifying crimes, underreporting crimes. The police are not allowed to enforce the law in the different states where they are, and so people don't report the crimes, and so therefore they're telling us that crime is down. The veracity of the FBI is at stake, which rely upon reported offenses by victims and law enforcement themselves. The federal government's own victim survey, which attempts to capture the gap between the number of actual offenses and the number of reported to the police, shows a much higher offense rates than the FBI does. What's going on? The FBI is skewing the numbers. That's what's happening. Moreover, it is also the case that because many localities had not transitioned to a new crime reporting system that the FBI had made mandatory in 2021, many municipal police departments did not submit crime data to the agency for 1 or 2 recent years, and these omissions sometimes included high crime metropolises such as Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City. Supposedly, however, this problem has largely been remedied, but of course, when you have the FBI skewing the numbers, who can trust it? Because it's the Democrats' Biden administration that has become a government against the people. Whatever the case, if crime has dropped, and that's a big if, it would simply align with long-term patterns. It has declined in general, after all, since the 1990s through Democratic and Republican administrations. Yet note here that much of this hinges on age-related demographic shifts, local policy, as crime is primarily a state and local issue. In the final analysis, statistics fall on deaf ears when people witness left-wing prosecutors coddling criminals, shoplifting is justified, depolicing, decarceration, politicized justice, and after all, no amount of spin changes the fact that bad policy is just that, bad policy. The FBI, the strong arm of the Biden administration, is skewing the numbers for you so that people will be hoodwinked into once again voting for a Democratic administration. It has become a government against the people led by the Joe Biden's FBI. We'll be back in just a moment. Now, I told you at the beginning, we would talk about how this is a government against the people, and the FBI now, very frightening developments going on with the FBI that is threatening people, not only people who are pro-life, who are protesting here and there, even families that are standing on the street corners and the FBI come up and arrest them, or come to the house and arrest them. But the FBI itself now has been playing a part in the Biden administration's unlawful pressure upon the state of Texas at Houston. And we're talking specifically about the Texas Children's Hospital performing transgender surgeries in violation of Texas law. And when people speak out about it, and when people become whistleblowers, who shows up on the porch but the FBI to threaten them that they need to shut their mouth? Now, back in March of this year, I reported that, I think it was Christian News had actually initially reported, but I talked about Dr. Ethan Heim, H-A-I-M, who works, or at that time worked for the Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. And he was facing a federal investigation for exposing transgender procedures done on children, even after the hospital said they had stopped performing them. So Governor Abbott signed a law saying no more transgender procedures. And the hospital says, no, we're not performing them. But Dr. Ethan Heim says, he's a doctor, he says, no, they're still doing it. And what happened? Well, he came under federal investigation for it. Medical professionals should not engage in barbaric transgender procedures, said Dr. Heim. These doctors believe they can become gods and create something new. It's not a doctor's job to harm people, even if the person wants it. That was actually from Breaking Christian News back in March of this year, March 1st. Now, not only are the doctors playing God and Joe Biden playing God, but they are using the strong arm of the FBI to knuckle them under and into obedience and shut mouth about what's actually happening. Because transgender procedures, including, quote, manipulating, mutilating, sterilizing young, confused adolescent children, continue to be practiced at the largest children's hospital in the world, according to Dr. Heim. In spite of the fact that Texas made it illegal last year, Governor Abbott signed, and he joined, by the way, 17 other states when he signed legislation barring youth from accessing puberty blockers and hormone therapies, including transgender surgeries. And that was from the Texas Tribune of June of 2023. At a conservative political action conference in Washington, D.C., Dr. Heim continued his accusations against Texas Children's Hospital. What is happening, he says, to these kids is not medicine. Terry Schilling, president of the American Principles Project, also spoke at the conference. Terry Schilling says there's nothing wrong with these kids' bodies. There's no such thing as a transgender child. There are boys and there are girls, end of quote. So by investigating the whistleblower, the federal government shows itself to be at war, not only with the state of Texas, not only with the federal Constitution, not only with the citizens of the United States, but God himself, who created mankind at the beginning and named them male and female. But there's more. Now, this comes to us this week from different news sources. A Texas surgeon who spoke out about the moral chaos, now joined by not only Ethan Heim, but joined by a nurse by the name of Vanessa Sivage, who has been personally visited and threatened by the Joe Biden FBI for blowing the whistle at the hospital because she tells us the hospital continues to push gender-affirming care while ignoring underlying psychological problems. This is from the Christian Post, June 21, 2024. Vanessa Sivage told the Post that the FBI agents, after she blew the whistle, promised they would make life difficult for me if I was trying to protect the leaker and that I was not safe at work. Now, think about this for just a moment. Here we have a Texas law signed by Governor Abbott, but Joe Biden sends the FBI, the Department of Justice sends the FBI to threaten Vanessa Sivage, who blows the whistle telling us that the Texas Children's Hospital is doing exactly what is against the law and what Texas Children's Hospital says it's not doing. And the FBI shows up on the doorstep. This is a rogue government. This is a government that is completely out of control. It's totalitarian. And this is Joe Biden's administration. I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on politically, right or left or in the middle or wherever you may be. Surely you cannot say that this is something going on good. This is an out-of-control government. And that's what's happening with a Democrat-led government in the United States. Now, Ms. Sivage told Christopher Rufo, by the way, a great reporter, written several books, great reporter on these issues. She told him that she had discovered evidence that doctors at the Houston hospital, quote, cut corners and that they fraudulently secured federal funds for sex change interventions for minors that are not illegal in Texas. The state prohibits Medicaid funds from being used for sex change operations. Not only does the hospital itself believe it is above the law, Ms. Sivage told the Post, but it is stealing from the federal government. The greatest danger, however, is the federal government itself. Republican Representative Brian Harrison is calling on the Texas legislature to conduct immediate hearings and launch an investigation into federal agencies involved. This would include issuing subpoenas to federal officials. But there are two things that I want to note right here as we bring this segment to a conclusion. Besides the fact that these are ungodly practices violating the Word of God, being funded by your tax dollars, Number one, as Christopher Rufo puts it, the Biden regime, and that's what it is a regime, is mobilizing to threaten and imprison anyone who opposes transgender medicine. The Democrats are running this country like a Gestapo regime, sending FBI agents to threaten whistleblowers at a Houston hospital. Imagine that. Here's Vanessa Savage, who has reported it. FBI shows up on her doorstep. Number two, a rogue federal government will probably ignore the subpoenas. Now, I know that we have a representative from the state of Texas, Representative Brian Harrison, who is issuing subpoenas to the people involved in the federal agencies to come before the Texas legislature and speak there. But what has the federal government shown? Our own Congress issued subpoenas to Merrick Garland, who's the AG in the Department of Justice in the United States. And what did Merrick Garland do? He ignored the subpoenas. This is what's happening. If you think that we can solve this by simply having Donald Trump in the office, you're mistaken. This is a government that is completely out of control. It is completely rogue. It is completely totalitarian. It is completely a regime. And you don't change a regime by putting a man in there and then having different legislation go on. You know what's going to happen. This is going to come to conflict, apparently. This is what's happening with America today under the Democrats, aka Socialist of America. And I'll tell you what, it's not going to be pretty. But we better get hold of this government, and we better get hold of it quick, because it is no longer a government of, by, and for the people. It is a government against the people, against people who are standing for freedom in middle America.